Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. My name is Nicole Devault, and seated here with me is Nomi Naeem. We are part of a small group of interspiritual ministers and educators here in New York City, whose mission is to create educational resources for home and school use drawn from the principles and insights of interspirituality. You can learn more about our work at www.theinterspiritualchild.com. Before beginning our presentation, I would like to thank Light on Light, and in particular, Dr. Kurt Johnson, for giving us the opportunity to present our work. It is truly an honor to contribute and be part of World Unity Week. I will now invite Nomi to begin our presentation.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Dr. Kurt Johnson, for giving us the opportunity to share our views on education and curriculum. We have been working as a team for the last 7 years, and we have made presentations at the Parliament of World's Religion in Salt Lake City and later in Toronto. And the idea is to bring together all the sacred books of the world and identify the common themes among them and develop a curriculum based upon those themes. We are also living in a time when all these different nations, different civilizations are spending enormous amounts on technologies of violence. So it is important that we bring the universal wisdom that is inherent in all the sacred books together so that we can do something for world peace and for the growth of all humanity. So I would also like to mention some of the inspirations that I received from great thinkers across East and West who have talked about this vision of bringing scriptures together. Henry David Thoreau wrote that it would be worthy of the age to print together the collected scriptures or sacred writings of the several nations, the Chinese, the Hindus, the Persians, the Hebrews, and others, as the scripture of mankind. Similarly, Swami Vivekananda said that we want to take the human race to a place where there are no Vedas, no Bibles, and no Qurans, but we must accomplish it by integrating all of them. So in our times, our technology has also helped us accomplish this vision that Swami Vivekananda and Henry David Thoreau had. Digital humanities is a way of using computer technologies on humanities texts and extracting patterns. So I would like to mention the contents of the database. We have 11 texts in the database, and we keep adding more. Right now we have Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, Dhammapada, Tao Te Ching, Hebrew Bible, Christian Bible, Quran, Granth Sahib, Course in Miracles, Analects, and Dialogues of Plato.
Could I stop you just for 1 minute,
Sure.
Nomi? Could you just elaborate a little bit or explain what the database is and how you came up with this idea?
So the database is it is developed in Excel spreadsheet, and on one sheet we have all the texts together. So one verse in one row, and the content can be searched by Visual Basic macros. So if I want to search, say, by compassion, that keyword will be searched across all the texts, and it will extract all the verses on compassion on a separate page. So this will tell us that, these are the verses on compassion from all the texts, and then we can analyze them further. We can create essays, we can create lesson plans, but the point is that all the texts are represented rather than just one. And having all of them represented together is crucial, because when we realize that all the sacred books have the same common message, that will send the message that there is no need for violence or division on the basis of religion, because they are talking about universal truths, universal wisdom. And once we bring them all together, we get that meaning more cogently, and there is more emphasis on the unity rather than the divisive part.
So I think we have a slide that illustrates that.
Yes.
Is that coming up next?
Yes, it is. It is one of the next slides. So go ahead, please. So the idea is that all the texts can be searched simultaneously, and one can identify the universal verses, which are present in almost all of them. Go ahead, next one, please. So the sacred texts here, the next table will show, are represented in the table. So here you see all the 11 texts, and on the top column you will see the qualities that we search for: truth, peace, goodness, beauty, love, compassion, forgiveness, knowledge, wisdom. So these are universals, and every culture values these considerations. And when we find verses in all of the texts, we can bring the verses together under the same heading. For instance, if we are talking about love, you will see that Hebrew Bible has 283 verses on love. A Christian Bible has 263. Quran has 77. Bhagavad Gita has 36. Upanishads has 115. Dhammapada has 8. Guru Granth Sahib has 3,327. Tao Te Ching has 3. Analects has 29. Course in Miracles has 92. Dialogues of Plato have 179. And Dialogues of Plato also are relevant in thinking about the universal qualities, because Plato's influence on the sacred traditions has been enormous. So having Plato there helps us see these concepts in a broader, more universal light.
So may I interrupt you for a moment?
Sure.
I see that you have about 12 qualities on top,
Right.
I believe. Is that only 12 you
No,
put into the database, or we can put as many as?
yeah, we can search. We have analyzed all the words, the word count, and we have identified what are the common patterns, common themes. For this database, for this presentation, we identified these, which are truth, goodness, and beauty are universals. Love, compassion, kindness, knowledge are universals. But there are other qualities which are equally represented in all the great texts. And so we are developing the curriculum, we are developing the essays, we are thinking about creating more artwork, which will have full representation of all the sacred books. And that curriculum could be implemented at schools, it could be published, it could be shared with people who are interested in education, which is more universal. Next slide, please. And also the idea of bringing the sacred books together is also relevant in the sense when we study social sciences, and we see there are several insights which make a case for bringing all the sacred books together. We have George Lakoff, we have Mark Twain, Pavlov's work, Pierre Bourdieu's sociology work, we have Michel Foucault, Michel Foucault, and Daniel Kahneman. And I will briefly mention the insights which we found relevant. Mark Twain once wrote that if you know a man's identity or nationality, you can come within a split hair of guessing the complexion of his religion. And when you know the man's religious complexion, you know what sort of religious books he reads, and when he wants some more light, and what sort of books he avoids. So that's why we do find some kind of a division on the basis of identity, that, you know, if I'm a Muslim, I will only read the Quran. If I'm a Christian, I will perhaps mostly read the Bible. So there is a need to see what other cultures have thought to be sacred, and which is part of their tradition. And if we do not read the sacred books of other cultures, we can't really understand what they value. And what you find is that they value the same things. Similarly, George Lakoff has brought us a perspective from cognitive science. He has talked about how language works, and when we listen to the same language over and over again, we form a representation of that particular meaning system, which can be activated later on. I mean, politicians are very clever in activating identity-based representations, because they know that, you know, if they can evoke fear by using language in a certain way. They can create divisions on the basis of propaganda and rhetoric. So understanding how language is instantiated in our brains is very crucial. And if we represent all the sacred books, we will think about all of them together rather than just one book, because we will have representations of those texts in our brain mind because of what we have learned, the way we have educated ourselves.
You know, it's very interesting what you're saying, because I remember hearing a story from one of my professors who was Jewish, and she told me that when she drove along a certain highway, there was a hill with a crucifix on it, and she just sped up whenever she passed it because she was extremely uncomfortable with that symbol.
Wow. And it has, of course, it has to do with her learning experiences,
Exactly.
the history of learning.
Exactly.
So, yeah, next slide, please. Similarly, Ivan Pavlov has done experiments in conditioning. He would pair two stimuli, and the brain can form a pattern of those two stimuli together. And once that pattern is formed, one can activate that pattern by using just one of the stimuli. And same thing happens when a child is born in any given culture, whether in a culture of Quran or Bible or Gita. For them, all the stimuli around them are neutral. But when they are represented to them over and over again by parents, by loved ones, by teachers, they form associational patterns with respect to that particular symbol system that they are being exposed to over and over again. So the idea is that if there are over-representations of one particular symbol system, that will also limit our perceptions and our being in the world, because it is going to be based on a very narrow and limited frame. So by broadening our frame, by broadening our representations, we also have corresponding broadening of our emotions, our thinking, our values. Next slide, please. So in a sense, if individuals learn to discriminate between similar and dissimilar, familiar and unfamiliar quite early in their development because of their repeated exposures to specific and culturally selected symbols and meanings. And they are instantiated in our brains, and they are there to stay unless and until we learn more, we broaden our research, we discover meaning systems which are equally compelling and have a broader understanding of the universe. Next slide, please. Similarly, Pierre Bourdieu's idea of the habitus. Habitus comprises socially acquired learning. Such learning influences the way individuals perceive the social world around them and react to it. And these learning experiences are usually shared by people with similar backgrounds. That background could be religious, could be social, could be national, ethnic, or educational. Next slide, please. Similarly, Foucault has talked about how people in power will make selections of what is going to be considered canonical in a given text. He calls it the power knowledge nexus. So the power elites determine what is considered sacred or canonical in a given text, and that could move from one generation to the next. And he has also shown how unconsciously and unwittingly people are subjected to discourses of specific power knowledge regimes. So when an idea appears to us repeatedly through different modalities, we are unaware of the prodigious machinery behind it, which is diligently doing the discourse selection and dissemination. Having that understanding helps us why cultures get locked into certain specific texts and have difficulty accepting texts of other cultures because of the way they have represented the world from the moment they were born. Next slide, please. So narratives which are told, retold, well represented in diverse domains, in the political arena, in the educational arena. So we internalize them, through the curriculum, through the mass media. And the derivatives of those texts are to be part of the commentary in well-defined situations, in well-defined circumstances. When you look at the talk shows, when you look at newscasts, the kind of people who are invited to comment in any given culture, you will see that there is some kind of a consonance of what is considered sacred and canonical in that particular text and the views of the commentator. So over the course of time, not all areas of discourse are equally open. So cultures ban and censor and suppress books and ideas. And why would they suppress one idea and not the other? That can be understood when we have a better understanding what Foucault has talked about, how power regimes determine what is considered canonical and sacred, and from one generation to the next. Next slide, please. Similarly, Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel laureate, he has talked about how ideas which are repeated to us over and over again, we think more and more in terms of that familiarity. So the exact quote is, a reliable way to make people believe in falsehoods or in any ideology for that matter is frequent repetition, because familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. Authoritarian institutions and marketing folks have always known this fact. So having that idea that, you know, what is familiar to us might not be the whole truth, that's a crucial insight. And if we want to broaden our familiarity, we will read other texts. We will read what is considered sacred and canonical by fellow human beings on other parts of the planet. So next slide, please. Similarly, Wilber has talked about how stages of development determine how we live and how we act and how we feel. And I would, as a librarian, like to suggest that our identity also determines what kind of books we read often rather than not. Egocentric, ethnocentric, world-centric, these are the three stages, major stages of growth and development. At an egocentric stage, one is only concerned about one's own self. It's considered pre-conventional. But if we move from egocentric to ethnocentric, we consider our group more important, along with our own self. So that is where us versus them distinctions are created. And then if we move towards a world-centric stage, where our models become global, we are concerned about violence anywhere in the world. We are concerned about injustice anywhere in the world, because we are considering ourselves part of the human family rather than part of a particular ethnocentric group, which was an accidental word. We could have been born anywhere. So when we discover world centricity in our growth and development, we realize that we are one with all, and that's where I think world peace can happen if we come out of egocentric and ethnocentric existence and move towards world centricity. Next slide, please. So Wilber, in a nutshell, says that human beings need an entirely new language, an entirely new semiotics, an entirely new way to talk about the world in order to describe the world that we are growing into. Without that, we are headed for a confusion of meaning, epidemic that is of staggering proportions. Hence, we need a new kind of education based on integration rather than division. So that's in a summary, our idea of what we are working on and the insights we have received from great thinkers. I will pass it on to Nicole to discuss her specific examples of curriculum and how she has used these ideas in her career as a teacher.
So Brother Wayne Teasdale is a pioneer in the interspiritual movement. His quote, "An inner life awakened to responsibility and love naturally expresses itself through engaged spirituality in acts of compassion, contributing to the transformation of the world and the building of a nonviolent, peace-loving culture that includes everyone." So one of my lessons that I presented at the Parliament of World Religion was called Inside of Me, and I've expanded it to Inside of We. Once we learn what is inside of us, we can see what is inside of the other, or vice versa. I've created a word wall, which is typical in a classroom setting, and it provides a visual for acquired vocabulary. In this case, the word wall is purposely created using universal qualities that we can find in sacred texts, poems, chants, and songs. The word wall is a way to reinforce and highlight these qualities in the student. They may also have encountered these words in their textbooks, fiction and nonfiction, films, videos, lectures. The word wall is simple and complex at the same time, allowing for learning at the preschool level as well as upper grade level, differentiated learning all the way up to adulthood. Words such as love, kindness, and sharing are easy enough for a 4-year-old to understand, but may take on a deeper meaning as a student grows both emotionally and spiritually. A word such as clarity or dominion would be more advanced and worthy of probing and discussion. This chart serves both the secular and the non-secular. I encounter educators who would like to use an interspiritual curriculum in their classrooms, but are prohibited from perhaps mentioning certain religious traditions. This word wall is inclusive and non-offensive, and a simple understanding and exploration of a word will have meaning to the individual. Simple tasks, such as assigning words to write essays, poems, or plays, even blogs, emails, and texts, begin to create a fluency and connection to a vocabulary of deep intention. I can give a brief overview of one type of lesson where the word wall can be used. The My Hero lesson will proceed thusly. Students will have learned through readings, videos, and lectures about heroes, both male and female, living, and those that have passed on, therefore arriving at the word wall having background knowledge. So, Nomi, would you mind helping me out here?
Sure.
Okay. I would like you to choose a person, a hero, someone that you admire and that you have some knowledge of. That will be our background knowledge.
I would say Mahatma Gandhi.
Okay, excellent choice. Now, I would like you to look at the word wall and choose 6 words that you would use to describe Gandhi.
So I would say awareness, compassion, courage, discipline, devotion, empathy.
Okay, I agree. But I certainly would let the student decide on these qualities. I would in no way guide them in this. That's very important, and we'll talk about in just a moment why that's important. So now that you've chosen these words, I want you to give me an example of one of those words that you chose and how Gandhi for you exemplified this quality.
Gandhi was famous for his non-violent approach. And he also was very respectful of all the great traditions that were in India. India has been very, very multicultural throughout its history. So I think his compassion was very profound. And he had great empathy for people of diverse backgrounds, different religions. He felt at home with Muslims and Christians and others, and would consider them fellow human beings who are on their own journey. And Hinduism has this wisdom that one can use any path towards salvation. Any particular path that we are born into is meant for us, and we can achieve our growth and transcendence through that particular path. So Hinduism doesn't have proselytization. So in that sense, Gandhi exemplified all those great virtues that Hinduism offers. So
the word compassion is the one that you used. That's your word. I didn't. That's the word that you identified in the other. Now that you've identified this quality, can you think of a time when you were compassionate? You don't need to tell us. And I want you to reflect on that moment and realize that you and Gandhi both have that quality inside of you. So whether you are aware of it as a young person, as a young adult, or an older person, all those qualities are there.
Mhm.
When you see them in the other, we know that they are in you. So at this point in a lesson, you have so many options to continue to explore that word through journaling, a writing assignment. As I mentioned, you could ask your students to use it in social media or a blog. They could create a dance or a poem. It's part of the vocabulary, but what we want to do with these words of equality that really defined us as spiritual beings, we want to use them over and over again, just like learning a foreign language. As you build up your vocabulary and your understanding, you create a fluency that is so embedded in your consciousness that it's very, very natural.
All right. That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I love this, the whole concept of having the wall and all the great qualities. And all these sacred books are also talking about the same qualities.
Exactly.
Regardless of the different metaphysics they use, but the qualities are the same.
And this is a very simple way to get at maybe those texts that people aren't reading, aren't ready to read, or are only reading from one particular tradition. We're actually moving into their consciousness and inviting them and showing them. Absolutely. And expanding their awareness.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So this is one way of looking at the world. We can focus on one aspect and diminish the other. And when you look at the figure and ground, we can choose to either look at the light or the dark. And we will see two different things. But they're both there. But it depends what we choose to perceive. And if we choose to perceive light, we will see light, and then our world will reflect that. And our own behavior will reflect that light. And when you look at the sacred books, that's what we found, that there is so much light that if we choose to focus on the light, it will overcome the problems that we often attribute to religions and religious identities and the way people interpret their texts. But what unifies them is far more profound and quantitatively far more than what divides humanity. And I think that's why we brought the sacred books together, because of the universal wisdom that we found across the board. Yes. By focusing on the light rather than the dark.
So I've gotten very, very into the work of Yuval Harari and Amit Ray, Dr. Amit Ray, who both are talking about artificial intelligence and technology. And Harari says, at present, we trust Netflix to recommend movies and Google Maps to choose whether to turn right or left. Excuse me. But once we begin to count on AI to decide what to study, where to work, and who to marry, human life will cease to be a drama of decision-making.
That's beautiful.
And Amit Ray tells us that to save the humanity, compassionate AI is not an option, but the destination, and that we really need to cultivate moral intelligence into our leadership. So I was very struck by this because I realized that technology is going in a direction where it can be very, very helpful, but it's also can be very dangerous. And I'm not sure the coders have a background of ethics and interspirituality and are really thinking about this before they're making the choices for this AI, this technology. So this isn't human, but the human is entering into its thought. So next slide, please. This is my really exciting new lesson, but I'm just going to talk about very briefly compassionate artificial intelligence, following the work that Dr. Amit Ray is doing, a spiritualist and an engineer. And you can continue. I have, I'm sorry, could you back up? I have decided to implement a lesson beginning with my 4-year-olds, and I've had a very serious discussion with my junior K up through 5th grade students about the importance of them thinking about how they're going to interact or create technology. And it's not tomorrow, and it's not when they grow up. They're going to do it right now. So they decided they wanted to create compassionate robots.
Wow.
And some of the ideas for their compassionate robots, a robot that would follow them to the playground and would intervene if a bully tried to harm them or tease them or hit them. So I asked one of the 5-year-olds, well, how would you do that? And they said, well, they would shoot lasers out of their fingers. And I said, that's very typical. I said, yes, but what kind of lasers? Let's think about that. Could they be lasers of love? Or could they be lasers of compassion or friendship? How about friendship? So that these compassionate robots would play a role in teaching us to be more loving and also to protect, to be kind. And they've been programmed by the children.
Wow. Beautiful.
Another child decided that they wanted to have a robot that would sit on their shoulder and they would have a constant friend with them. Another one wanted one that would come to their house and help them with their homework.
Right.
So again, you can use all of these qualities to create something of substance in the minds of very, very young children. So all of the things that we have talked about today can be used right here and right now.
That's amazing. Wow. Fascinating.
And we can make it simple.
Then we are starting early.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And of course, the golden rule we find in all sacred texts.
Absolutely.
It can be just as simple as do unto others as you would do unto yourself.
And the reason it has not been able to, we have not been able to live up to the golden rule, when you look at the history of our species, there is so much violence and bloodshed, often in the name of religion and nationality and identity. Golden rule has always been there, part of the tradition. But why have we not been able to implement it? Because it is not represented in our curriculum, in our parenting practices, in our media. We are not internalizing the golden rule as we are internalizing the divisive messages. So that's where the need for bringing them all together on the same page, so that there is an optic, there is a visual that a child looks at when he or she is growing up, that, you know, all these great wisdom traditions are saying the same thing. So why do we have to discriminate on the basis of race, class, creed, nationality, if all the great traditions have the same, what they consider sacred? So that to me is the goal of education and what we are trying to do in our work.
And I certainly would like to reach out to educators, because I think that's where it has to begin. I'm frequently called to do professional development on exactly this topic. And that's when I've been able to find a way to reach go into the education system in a non-secular way, but bringing in spirituality.
Which is universal. It is qualities of our own consciousness.
So I think we're coming just about to the end of our presentation. Right. And if you want to say some parting words, Nomi?
Yeah, I would like to invite all of whoever has a chance to listen to this to connect with us if they are interested in implementing the curriculum. Also give us their advice, how we can make it better, refine it, and hopefully offer it to whoever would like to integrate sacred books and philosophy together in the curriculum. So please do connect with us. We have the interspirituality.com website, and also Facebook page, East West Integral. You can reach us from there. There was also the Rumi and Ibn Arabi.
Oh, I think we lost.
Yeah,
the
so
last
we
two
have the,
slides.
we have the.
You want to read one
yeah,
of your quotes
I would love to end it
to
with,
end?
I have been thinking about which quote would be the perfect, sort of a conclusion. And I found Ibn Arabi's Love's Camel. Oh, marvel, a garden amidst the flames. My heart has become capable of every form. It is a pasture for gazelles and a convent for Christian monks, and a temple for idols and the pilgrim's Kaaba, and the tables of the Torah and the book of the Quran. I follow the religion of love. Whatever way love's camels take, that is my religion and my faith. That was Ibn Arabi. So thank you so much. I think that would be the perfect ending to the presentation. Thanks to Nicole.
Oh,
Thanks
thank
to
you,
Jafe
Nomi.
behind
Yes,
the
our
scenes.
tech person.
And
Thank
we
you.
look forward to hearing from you and working together if that happens to be a possibility. Thank you very much.
Good night.